Welcome back to the Waking Up From Work podcast. You're listening to episode 94 of the podcast tonight. This is your host, Dave Swillem, and we're coming at you live again. This time from, well, actually, I was going to say this time from Gray, but most of the episodes are from Gray. So it's not really the biggest change. That's actually part of it is right now we're like a mile away from my place, and we're hanging out with the guys from Craft Curbside here. If you're ever up going to Craft Curbside, they are a hyper local, sourcing from local ingredients, curbside pickup place, essentially. It's not necessarily a restaurant, but it's not necessarily like a takeout thing. It's a big mix of things that we do with craft cocktails and cocktails they make themselves, and just a big bunch of things that are happening. And we'll get into it a little bit more, but if you're ever here, definitely hit me up because I could walk to come hang out with you. And I was telling them when I first got here, it's kind of a special story they've got a special spot in my heart because we were drinking some of their cocktails when we were like doing our last tours and being like, yeah, this is the one that we're going to do this. So a little bit of them in our decision-making process here, but thank you guys for having me live from your spot here and having me in your kingdom here at Craft.
Yeah, thanks for bringing us on as guests. Like I was saying earlier, it means a lot to be able to sort of share our story. It's pretty unconventional, but I think a lot of things are unconventional right now.
Of course. Yeah, for those out there that don't know, these guys opened a business during COVID. How's that?
A restaurant during COVID when restaurants are closing, shutting down, doing outdoor dining, having to change their whole system and flip what restaurants have been doing for dozens of years.
Yeah. Our kind of advantage was that we weren't open before is almost sort of our advantage, and we weren't planning on opening a conventional restaurant, or we were, but we had pivoted into something that's completely different, and we think that that's kind of a structure that is sustainable in these times and that can work a little
total
bit
advantage. Yeah, it's daring. Like, it's definitely like, I give you guys huge props for doing that, because so many would be like, oh, I'm just going to wait for things to be settled. But also, like, you're right, like, and we'll get into it totally because you were talking about some of the stuff earlier, but you have the advantage of not having this setup that had no idea that COVID could be an existing thing on the planet and that would do any of that. You knew what was going down at least. And then that is what's so cool about your business is you literally made it for the way that people are working right now. But really importantly, I think I talked to Tyler one time. I stopped in, I was like, it's so smart because I really think definitely our generation, but I think even more, I think really everyone's on board with, I think this is a thing that we like. Like, people like to be able to get food and pick it up. And you guys have a lot of things that are extra to like a normal takeout thing. You have a lot of extra offerings that are way past that. But for those out there that don't know Craft Curbside, do you guys want to run people through like, what's the business? How did this happen? What's this about here?
Yeah.
Well, so I guess Chase and I, to give a brief synopsis of what happened was, Chase brought myself and Tyler on to help run the bar program at Liquid Riot Bottling Company in Portland. And I want to say maybe 6 months into it, Chase and I we had talked about, we kind of realized that we saw eye to eye as far as just the general idea of like how to run a restaurant.
Sure.
Sort of like the macro scale of like what's good about restaurants. We were sort of just talking, dream wise, like what would it be like to open a restaurant together. And I think it was like during quarantine, we didn't have anything to do, and we were like, so what would it look like if we were to open a restaurant? And we were already playing around with some of the numbers and looking at statistics and things like that. Yeah. And the industry, like as a whole, was already moving towards takeout, towards delivery, just people ordering, on an app on their phone. Yep. Or just grabbing something that they could, finish cooking at home. And Chase sort of built the business plan around COVID. And
So we've been working with like Score, which is an awesome help for small businesses that are opening in the area. We worked with Score. And we were talking to our mentor, and she gave us a lot of help in terms of the initial plan, which was a big 150-seat restaurant.
Sure.
And then out of nowhere, we found this space, and in 24 hours, we pivoted. We did a whole new business plan, a whole new financial breakdown.
Because this is totally, this is completely different than that idea that you had initially.
We were picturing a farm-to-table restaurant with a high-end cocktail bar upstairs, like people have seen, but not in this area, essentially.
120 seats.
Yeah.
We wanted to bring like that big sort of modern but like relaxed fine dining to the Bray Wyndham.
And that kind of was the first thing to go, was the big rooms and the big fancy service and lots of people sitting down at a bar. What used to be a good thing of lots of people being involved in your service and making it that extra level is no longer positive to have 6 people touch your stuff. And visit your table through the day and pour you water and do all the different things like that. So kind of figuring out how best, everything with us is driven around hospitality and like that concept of still delivering hospitality. So how best to do our level of service, our like quality of products, but also still getting that at like a level of hospitality that we would be happy with in a format that fits with the 2020 kind of scenario that everybody was going through. So we were all sitting at home on unemployment, figuring out when our restaurant was going to let us come back and do what we've been doing for the past couple of years. And this kind of fell in our laps and we couldn't really turn it down at that point. So
do you think that COVID and having that time and that honestly probably extra motivation, like pan to the fire, do you think that pushed this like sooner, this plan that you had?
Absolutely.
Like this, I don't think escalated it.
Yeah, I don't think we could have ever opened a concept like this in a time other than during COVID. We opened on the most minimal scale of a restaurant that's probably ever opened other than like a hot dog cart on the side of the road. We pretty much had nothing. We were selling, I think we mentioned we were selling strawberries for day one. We went and picked strawberries and we sold quarts of strawberries.
We had about as much resources as somebody's lemonade.
Yeah, exactly. So we started with pretty much like a handful of dollar bills and have kind of built it from there to what we have, which is a full establishment with like beverages and stuff.
I looked at our first menu recently, and it's a full page menu with 3 items on it.
Yeah.
We did 3 sandwiches for our soft open and a crab cake made with lobster.
Yeah.
It should be mentioned though that we've had a lot of support from family and friends. And friends in the industry, and the 3 of us have very patient wives.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So shout out to the ladies.
A lot of support.
That's huge.
Definitely a lot of support across the board. And honestly, even people we didn't know, and like just people in the area here have been super great in Gray, who were excited to have something that was like local and was actually selling them food that was grown in the area.
Please.
And had a little more thought into it. A lot of people probably aren't familiar with Gray, and the reason behind that is there's not a lot here.
Yeah.
There's not any really food options. I live in Gray, so having more options is something that everyone was kind of looking for. So,
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for us, like obviously there's amazing food in Portland, you know, and people are moving to Gray and Wyndham and obviously South and Westbrook and all these places. People are moving out of these places to afford to hang in Portland, but it's still the culture's there of this is the type of stuff that people want to have around. They want to have access to. They might have access to something like this in Portland. Maybe definitely not the same exact stuff that you guys do because it's very original. But offering that to this community, it's huge for me and Meg. Selfishly, like this is stuff that we really like.
Yeah,
you know?
And even honestly, after we've opened, like. A lot of other people have seen this as an area that does have a lack of stuff. Like I think there's 3 new restaurants that have announced they're opening in the next year and a half, something like that.
In Gray?
In Gray.
Yep.
No way.
There's places that, because Portland has dropped off so much, there's spots like Yardie Ting. They're looking at opening their second space here when they started in Portland. So to be branching from Portland to a space like Gray is kind of an expression of the times. But I think we kind of came in a little ahead of people who were so focused on the city that was booming, because Portland was booming on food.
Right.
And everyone's like, oh, I want to be in Portland, as opposed to the vast majority of people who are actually living outside of Portland and commuting that 15 minutes in and don't have anything in their area. So
I think one of the things that we were looking at was the housing crisis in Portland was pushing a lot of like middle class folks like out of the city center and to suburbs and even further out than that, and they were sort of like it's like, do you drive 30 minutes to Portland to get like some good like independent restaurant like food that's like made by hand and hasn't been ultra processed and is locally sourced, and that's why we're like, yeah, this area is really underserved. And it should be noted that like, yeah, we started off really small, but there's a lot more that we want to do in the future. There's so much more that we could do with our skill set. It's just, we're limited by our space and the equipment we have, but as we grow, we'll be able to provide more to the area, and we're really looking forward to that.
Yeah.
And COVID almost gave us that opportunity to like, people were more open to work with new things. Like in a system that had a set up, accepted way that restaurants open and what they provide you on opening day compared to what people were okay with us opening with in the middle of the pandemic. Yeah, exactly.
They're like, listen, I've been inside for 15 days. I would love some fresh ass strawberries.
That
please.
Sounds great. So things like that. Like I think people were more open to, we're opening with 2 meal kits, and we have lasagna that we're making by hand. And like we have our pulled pork, and we're doing sandwiches that you can bring home and finish. Things like that were super small, but still had options that people could get. And they were kind of cool with not having a million options, but just something.
Yeah.
So
I mean, usually they say like for a business to operate like really well, you want to have less options because the overhead cost to have all these things. If people are going to be just as pumped, then you know what I mean. Like, and sometimes for indecisive people. So there's a lot that I want to get into for sure. I guess like, cause you started there, like you guys have this, you two are just like, okay, restaurants are shut down. How does the idea start basically? Cause I know that you have the long-term idea of when you're there, you're like, hey, someday we should totally do this. We're clicking, like, let's do this sometime. What triggered it where you're like, straight up, you're like, actually, let's just go do this right now. Because you said you straight up started out by selling like strawberries and like a couple sandwiches. Like, what happened where you're just like, let's just get in here and like, let's just figure this shit out?
So Chase actually, like, the two of us had always talked about having like some sort of catering operation, a test kitchen, like a separate arm of that bigger restaurant that would handle the catering, handle doing like some more funky stuff.
Yeah.
And it would be a small operation just like this. And Chase was like, why don't we just do that right now? Because like when we were talking to our mentor from SCORE, she was like, she kind of pointed us in the right direction as far as like figuring out like what we would have to do to approach investors. And we were looking at the money it would take to start a 120-seat restaurant. And it was like,
oh yeah,
now's not the time to go to investors and ask for that kind of money for a restaurant.
Totally.
You were laughed out of the room.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
How good of an idea it was a year ago. It's kind of different at this point.
It'll be a good idea again.
Yeah.
So Chase was like, all right, well let's run with the little test kitchen, like low overhead, working kitchen is already there, and
and I was selling cocktail mixers to my neighbors.
Yeah.
That was the biggest thing as we started. I was selling cocktail mixers to my neighbors.
That's so sick.
And yeah, my wife was dealing with sending it to everybody, and I was just mixing stuff at the house. And we were like, oh, no one has cocktails in the area. What if we just set up and the original concept that we talked about was cocktail mixers, and eventually built off of Maine's current laws where you can sell cocktails to go.
Yeah.
Eventually getting our liquor license, doing it entirely cocktails to go. And we weren't even thinking about food other than maybe farm boxes.
Yeah.
And then we finally convinced Tyler
to
come back.
That's funny.
And brought him on, and then that's when the food side of stuff started.
Yeah. I hit like a panic point because like we were looking for chefs, and I was trying to convince friends that I worked at restaurants with like from 10 years ago that live out west, and like, hey, you want to move
back to Maine?
I might
we wanted
as well
somebody
lived out west.
Yeah.
we wanted somebody that like is like a brother to us, like somebody that we trust, because like the person we were going to bring on is going to be in it as much as we are.
Exactly.
And it should be recognized that Tyler's effort to put together a menu in like a month, 2 months.
Yeah, about that.
Herculean, and to what it's grown into is like.
Yeah, I need to share my perspective of
Yeah.
all of this. So, so before COVID, my now wife, my girlfriend, and then fiance, and she was a traveling ultrasound tech. So we would travel. We've been to Yakima, Washington, Las Vegas, New Mexico, Indiana. We've been all around the country. We spent like two and a half years traveling, and we hit up Portland, Maine. And I was like running low on funds. I'm like, okay, I need to find a job. And I ended up talking to Chase at Liquid Riot. He hired me. And then I liked the job. So we were supposed to be in Portland for 3 months, which turned into a year.
I got him to stay.
Yeah, you did a good job.
I promoted him. I kept him around a little longer.
How great is it here? How awesome. Isn't things cool here? So, what do you do on the weekend? I'll show you other things around here. How cool.
And then the next contract came up and we left. Her and I went to Georgia, spent some time there. Didn't have as much fun as we were hoping. We were starting to get worn out of packing the car every few months and moving to a new place. And so she took a permanent position in March in New Hampshire, Nashua. So she starts her job. I had a job pretty much lined up. I had an interview. I was invited to a practical second interview. I was very excited. The day I was supposed to start that interview was the day the world shut down.
Yeah, it's a bartending job.
Yeah, exactly.
Job.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and I put a lot of funds into getting us moved into this new place. I was out of money again. And so I started like delivering groceries for Instacart, which saved me financially.
Awesome.
And then
I feel like you're actually crushing it with Instacart.
Yeah, I was. Yeah,
for a little while. Where, man, Instacart was paying more than anything.
Yeah. It started to taper off. I started to get, concerned again. I also started hitting some bouts of depression, which I'd never really had before.
Wow.
With the social distancing of a very social person. And then
we're all pretty big extroverts, I'd say.
And then Chase called me up and said, "Oh, we're opening a restaurant." And I was like, "You're doing what?" He's like, "Yeah, we're opening a restaurant. We want you to be the chef. Are you in?" Like, I live in New Hampshire. Like, we can make it work. Just are you in?
I was like, I don't care. Dylan lives in New Hampshire too.
Chase is like,
I hear what you're saying. I just don't hear it as a problem.
Maybe we could figure out a way that you prep stuff and then we meet halfway, and then I'm like, no, we can't do that because of health codes and stuff. So it ended up being I was crashing on their couches for 6 months.
Yep.
5 days a week, and then going back to my wife in New Hampshire a couple days a week. And then she got a job up here. I just moved up here a month ago.
Like I said, we have very patient wives.
Yeah. It was not an understatement.
Big, though.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Like, literally, like this project that I'm doing right now for this place, if my wife was not like a superstar, I'm like asking to put like certain things into this building. She's allowing me to renovate a barn into a recording studio, which is bullshit.
Yeah.
So it's just
I've slowly turned.
You gotta love the wife game. Like if they are like they gotta be a rock star, else this stuff can't happen because you gotta do some crazy shit.
Oh yeah,
right,
for sure.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
So you guys start it, then you're like, we want to cook. We get him on board. I remember coming in to see you, and I was like, I'm extrovert too, so I was chatting, and you're like, I moved from New Hampshire, and you're like, oh yeah, I live in New Hampshire. And I was like, oh no shit,
I remember your first time in
Portsmouth, and he's like, yeah, Nashua. I was like, what are you fucking doing? What are you talking about?
I think I told you that I was either crazy or insane.
Yeah,
one of the two. It might have been both.
Definitely, there's a combination.
Guy loves his job.
Yeah,
into it. Wonderful.
Yeah.
All right, so you guys start up, and like, basically, like, you're just like, we're gonna start up no matter what. Like, how did it even come into play? Where you're like selling strawberries and these sandwiches and stuff. Like, did you start up and you're like legit started up and you're like, I have no idea what we're gonna do, or you had some idea, or like
we knew what we wanted to do.
Yeah,
we didn't necessarily know what it was gonna take to do all that, but we had like a vision of like at least quick service food, and then meal kits was a big part of it, where it was like takeout food. We were hoping that the liquor license would come through a little easier than it ended up doing. We're still a couple months out on actually serving cocktails in-house and having carry-out liquor.
Yep.
But other than that, honestly, we got very lucky on actually meeting a lot of the criteria we needed and being able to do that.
Awesome.
The town liked us because we actually talked to them about what we were doing, and no one had ever done that before.
Yeah.
So
it's crazy.
We actually got the permits, which was huge. No one had done that.
It's
nuts.
And the town of Gray was super helpful and awesome with getting us started.
That's why I'm here. because I hit Auburn before here, and then I checked out like one other place like a little bit west. And when I like first of all, I had like a timeline, and I was like kind of boxed in of like this has to happen at a certain time, and I'm asking a million things from this property. And so like great, like the code enforcers here are amazing.
Yeah.
They're just busy.
Yeah.
So like I would call them and I'd talk to them. They're like, okay, come talk to me. But then they like were not returning my calls because they're just like, I've seen them. They're out all day long.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So not anything on them, but they weren't returning my calls. So I was straight up like, I like drove an hour and a half and I just like went in there and I was like, I need to talk to these people and like, I need to see if I can do this here. And I remember when he took my meeting, I came in, I printed out like the exact coding for where I live at. I printed out all the home business, like all the coding and everything. I came in with like a binder and I wrote a rebuttal for everything. Like you need to be this thing and not do this thing. It's like, this is how I am, or I'm not doing this thing. And I came in and he's like, dude, I've done this for like 20 years. No one has ever walked in my door and put this on my lap. Like everyone has come in, they're like, yo, I want to do something. Can I do that? And it's like,
what do I need to do? Yeah.
They were blown away that like I was like after it. So I think that they just respect that.
Yeah.
And that's huge. And this town's awesome where they're really like looking.
I was impressed. I've never had
definitely
such an easy time.
Yeah. I think they really
Love it.
understand their location where they are here, and that they're right on the highway, and that there's a lot of people moving here, and that business can be a huge part of helping the town grow. And,
right.
like,
And that's what I want. And that's what you guys want.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's another big part is like a lot of the stuff we sell is supporting local businesses, and like all the farms we're using.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah. So
hyper local. What does that mean?
Yeah. So our biggest concept was we were seeing long lines of food people waiting outside of Hannaford's looking for food in June, July, August, and then all the farmers we've been working with in restaurants in Portland were all telling me how stressed they were because they had all this food they'd planted. And all the restaurants had just closed that they were going to sell it to.
Because all the the meat was just gone off of the shelves for like 3 weeks. But you had meat people down the road who were like, we have all this product to sell and we're not selling it.
Yeah.
But crazy.
There was just a disconnect.
Yeah. It was the hands
kind of
touching,
to
like
be
the meeting and it, the exchange of it was
we were
there's
hoping
a
to be that
disconnect.
bridge point of because it used to be where everybody knew they knew a produce farmer, they knew a butcher, they knew a baker, and they'd get all that stuff. Nowadays, people are relying on one store that's kind of centralized that.
Right.
So we kind of went and became that centralization point of we know a farmer, we know someone who has awesome meats, we know someone who has awesome breads, we can get you dairy products and all this certain stuff from the area, and keep that money in the area, keep people who are also stressed about selling things kind of getting their business and their stuff keeping on going in these times too. So that was definitely the biggest thing for us. The first products we bought were meat products from a mile down the road. I think I'd say 90% of our produce came from 2 farms between Bumble Root, which is an awesome organic farm in Wyndham, and Mulberry Farms, which is another organic farm right over, and I think they're technically in Raymond.
Wow.
But some awesome people doing like really great stuff, and who were honestly like really excited to have us reach out to them at a time where restaurants were not reaching out to people. Farmers were getting kind of the opposite message from restaurants. So people who were really excited about that. They're
sitting there with the product, and then the restaurants are like, let me just see what's going on here. Let me figure this out here. And you guys are like straight up like, hey, I want to get your stuff like real bad.
Like farms place their order, like people don't always realize, but farms place their seed order in November and December. So they plan their farms in the fall. And then it comes spring, and if they're planning on planting stuff and people now are not going to be buying that, there's a huge question mark in the air for them where, okay, we were basing this off of trends and stuff like that, but to know what's going to happen.
You can't stop it.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't just throw it out. Like you have to sell that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
There's no option for you to like be like a retail store with clothes in it. And you're just like, we're going to turn off the lights and lock it up for a little bit. So. I saw like Instagram and TikTok and like saw videos of farmers with like milk that they're just pouring out into fields and just like it's been a thing with that, like crazy.
Which we're actually taking subscriptions for our farm box right now.
Yeah, so that's one thing we do, and we're setting up more of like a CSA style of it too for the coming year. So like where most people do a CSA is like a crop share. So you would pay a certain amount of money at the beginning of the year, and then you would get weekly produce from that farm.
Cool.
Based off of kind of doing that. So we're doing a similar thing but using our 5 to, I would say, a dozen-ish farms that we use for everything from honey
we're growing every month
to dairy to meat products and produce
Love
and
it.
stuff. Grains, we're using main grain products now and all sorts of different stuff. So kind of a blend of that goes into a farm box and keeps that going.
From the health aspect, I mean, you're getting all these things from like the soil and the air around you. There's something to be said about actually having organic produce and locally raised meat. That's
and the amount of nutrition, like people don't always realize, but the nutrition level in food itself actually drops a lot through just the amount of time it spends in the fridge. Like from the time you harvest it to the time you eat it, the amount of nutrition goes down. So the less time that you have in between there, it's like that much more healthy for you. Yeah. So just keep getting, I mean, you're bang for your buck instead of someone growing organic celery for you in California and then they ship it to the organic section in Hanford's. You actually have organic food being grown for you down the street. Stuff like that. So
I love it.
Yeah, I remember the celery that you brought in from Boulevard Farms
the
back in
celery was
August.
the biggest thing. We did a big post about like normal celery that people see, which is like yellow or white and a little bit of green, versus we had some that was like
it's this
the
beautiful
darkest
deep green. I'd never seen celery like that
and we
before.
mentioned the
you wouldn't
food.
know.
Yeah, and we mentioned the
if you've always bought it from the store for your whole life, you would never know the difference if you didn't grow it. You know,
and people who tasted it were like, we were selling food to like the kids that we had mentioned, and we were selling like we'd send celery over, and it was like so much more powerful flavor that they'd have like a tiny little bite instead of a whole stick, and they're like, "Oh,
what the hell is this?
I can't even. What are we doing now?" It's like, "Oh, that's actually celery." Yeah.
But they're troopers, man. Like I think.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Within like a few weeks, they were trying stuff that they've never tried before.
We've quadrupled the number of kids in Wyndham that are open to bok choy. Absolutely. At the very least, that's like my.
Can I have some bok choy tenders, Ma?
Yeah. Like
we had a parent reach out to us.
Oh yeah,
my kid was.
One of the teachers, they were singing a song about like vegetables, and everyone jumps up and says a vegetable. One of the little kids jumps up and goes bok choy because we serve bok choy at lunch, and like they've learned all these different foods and stuff through the lunch program.
What'd you just say?
Yeah, it's like what do you mean? So, but yeah, so it's definitely been really fun to kind of get that going too, and like show people what food really can be if you're kind of doing it right.
I used to do cooking demonstrations as a job. I'd go to the high schools and like tech programs, and I went to a lot of like inner city schools doing this. So I was doing some sort of stir fry or something, and I used a pear, and there was a girl in the class. It was like, "Oh, what is that?" I'm like, "Oh, it's a pear." She's like, "I've never seen a pear before." And I was
like what?
I didn't want to be like,
make her.
Are you kidding me? Like, this is a basic fruit, blah blah blah. You should know what this. But at the same time, it made me sad. So I feel like we're actually like giving these kids like just by giving them food that's kind of natural or whatever.
Yeah.
Kind of just giving them some base knowledge on.
So explain this program because the listeners don't know what this is.
Yeah. So my wife is like a really talented early childhood education. So she's trained in like a lot of different styles.
Here in Maine.
In Maine, yeah. So she's done Montessori, she's done Waldorf, she's done like a lot of different styles of education. Now she's at Creative Explorations, which is a fantastic school in Wyndham. They do all the way from infants to, they just added a pod program this year with COVID. They added what is essentially like it's a homeschooling pod for like, I think it's kindergarten-ish to first grade-ish grade.
Interesting.
Age level. So they have that whole wide range, and we partnered with them to provide a local lunch option. So they didn't have hot food as part of the program. They are a small school, so they can't offer that.
Right.
The parents were prepping their food.
Yeah, so the parents are all sending in lunches every day.
Yeah.
And they were just extremely excited to have that opportunity for one, to not have to prep it every day, but also to have more options and diversity and other people doing it. And the option to have not just, yes, you're trying to get your child to eat something, and if you just send it with them, the odds of them eating it versus if everyone in that class is eating it together and experiencing it together and trying something and talking about it and like really getting into like a new food and what that means, we found that that's been a huge difference.
I really love the try bite.
Yeah. The no thank you bite.
Portion.
Yeah, the no thank you bite, which is like we'll give them like a little portion of something when we're trying out a new food or a new method of cooking or something like that, where we'll give them just a little bit of it and they try a little bite of it, and it's like, oh, sometimes it's a huge hit, and like that becomes something they love, or sometimes it's just something that they tried at least and got into their diet a little bit.
They're big on the curry chicken too. That's
really?
The
like
things
the
that they've
favorite.
been into have been like amazing.
Curry
Like,
chicken, man.
curry chicken is huge
with coconut and like cumin and like some like different like turmeric and all these different spices.
Yeah.
I was like, the
Crazy.
first time I made it, I didn't do it strong. I like
amazed
really
at the
light,
stuff
and then
that
they're
they
like,
really
no,
like.
they want more.
They're like,
Yeah.
up that curry.
Yeah.
Chase does daily correspondence with all the teachers.
Yeah.
And we get feedback daily
Yeah.
on like, okay, the kids didn't really like this, and we think it's because of the way that it was cut, not because of the food.
Yeah, or like some mac and cheese. Like
Wow.
obviously kids like mac and cheese, so we make mac and cheese here as
We
one of our
thought
meal
that-
kits.
yeah.
So we're like, oh, that's a no-brainer. We make ours with a farfalle, which is like a bow tie pasta.
Yeah.
And we found the kids were not eating it. And we're like, why aren't the kids eating mac and cheese? So we switched the pasta shape. And the whole thing
Penny's
was
easier
like,
to pick up.
penny's easier to pick up.
For
And
little
a lot of
fingers.
like certain age groups, if they don't think that they can fit the whole thing in their mouth, they're not even going to try it.
Right.
So if
wow.
it isn't a small enough piece that they think they can do it, then they're not going to eat it. So like finding those small changes.
This is like research.
Yeah,
This is like
exactly.
valuable
Like,
research
I've
for
learned,
people.
As someone who has a 35-week pregnant spouse, I've learned a lot about feeding babies over the past 6 months. So yeah, it's definitely been a fun learning curve.
You're gonna be visiting someone,
Yeah,
and like your kid's gonna be with someone else, and they'll be like, "He's not eating."
He's not
You'll be like,
eating, yeah.
Switch that shit to penne.
Yeah,
All right,
like,
let's
what are you talking about? Like,
go.
eat that. What do you do?
God, what are you doing over there? I'm
Like,
like,
I wouldn't
God.
eat that mushy broccoli either. Like, what are you doing? So yeah, it's like serving kids
More
foods that, like,
curry,
you want.
more.
Yeah.
Let's go.
But yeah, so that's been, I think, the most rewarding program that we've done. It's something we really hope to expand on when it's less COVID-y time. Obviously, people aren't as open to having people come into the school and interact.
Yep.
But we're already, because my wife works there, we're already kind of in the community.
Right.
So that's been something. But it's definitely something we're hoping to expand into the area and kind of get more local food to local kids and get that going.
That's so interesting. And
Also, I mean, it like has a special place in my heart because it's like kind of how we start our morning every day.
Yeah,
Like,
every day. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's like,
Oh,
oh,
is
what we
getting
got
that
for
stuff
kids'
prepped?
food today?
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So we send it. We open at 11 and we get the kids' food to them at 11:15. So we're here prepping.
wow.
We fill a car. We drive it down the road. It's about 12 minutes to get there. So we drive down the road and deliver it while the other person's here opening up shop and getting all that going. So it's like our first thing we do in the day is feed 50 hungry kids and teachers. So yeah, it's kind of a rewarding start to getting everything going. You feel like
Definitely.
you accomplished something, and right now we're doing the rest of it.
Yeah. And if we don't serve anybody the rest of the day, we already served 30
Yeah, we
kids
already
this morning.
served-
Like,
yeah, exactly.
it's a successful day.
And at the beginning, that was the situation. So it was definitely our backbone
Yeah,
for the first few months.
That's one of
Awesome.
the reasons that we're here right now.
Oh, absolutely. Without
Yeah.
having
Wow.
that program, we
It
not
would
to
have been
say we wouldn't still be here.
no, but we wouldn't. I don't think we'd be as big as
We
we
wouldn't
are
have
right
any
now.
of this
Yeah.
liquor on our shelves.
Yeah, it's a lot of inventory.
Strawberries.
It's a lot of
So,
inventory.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that we're really excited about. I mean, we're huge like craft cocktail nerds. I think the dream for me and Chase that we were talking about, that's 6 months into first working together was like how do we get on the world's 50 best bars?
Cool.
Like how do we get a James Beard Award for like our bar program? Like these are all just dreams. Like they're highfalutin. Like
You should have them.
But
You
yeah,
should.
we're coming from like I was at a like cocktail bar in Boston that was like top 30 in Boston.
Cool.
Assistant bar director to a gentleman who at the time got like best bartender in Boston for 2018
Wow.
and stuff like that. And then when I came to Liquid Riot, the whole idea was it was a brewery distillery that no one knew made liquor. So
Huh.
they kind of wanted to up their cocktail scene in that whole regard.
Yeah.
So I was brought in to overhaul their cocktail side of stuff. And
Wow. And
that-
they're hyped. Like people love that.
Yeah, it's definitely the cocktails. Exactly, the cocktails have definitely grown and people have gotten into it. So that was kind of my job. And in that course, I found people like Dylan, who's like talented in that regard. Brought him on.
Actually, I moved here 2.5 years ago from the Berkshires, which is like Western Massachusetts. It's a big like tourist destination for folks coming up from New York City. It's like known as like the cultural capital of America.
Sure.
So there's a lot of theater and art there. The biggest contemporary art museum in North America is there. So it was like really small. Since it's such a small town, there's not a lot of people live there. There's a really small, tight knit restaurant community, but it was high quality. my wife and I had gone on vacation up here in Portland, and I was really just like taken with the beer scene, the food scene, and even the cocktails. Like we ate at Liquid Riot. I was like, because like I'm a huge like drinks nerd, and I was like, oh, Liquid Riot makes their own spirits. Like we should go check that out. It's right on the water. And we sat at the bar, and it's funny. And now that I think about it, I know the bar seats that we were sitting at. But Chase bartended on us, and at the time, like I wouldn't have talked to him until like 2 years later. But he was making cocktails, and I nudged my wife. I was like, "He's good," and she's like, "Stop it! You're being a nerd." And it's just like a small world. I came up here. I worked at a couple places that I wasn't vibing at, and Chase ends up hiring me. It's just very, very weird. I never was like, I'm gonna work at Liquid Riot, but
that's so weird.
It just kind of happened that way.
We kind of built a community of, honestly, headed into that summer, we had what I thought was one of the best bar programs in the state. We had a lot of like really passionate bartenders we hadn't hired anyone who wasn't a bar manager at another bar in probably a year. And
sure.
Anyone else who was bartending had started as either a server or a busser or a barback and had been trained from our program.
Yeah, I may have been the only one because
Tyler was a cook that we trained to bartend. He had a lot of culinary experience, and we got him like a lot of experience in classic coffee. He's a very diligent, hard worker on like specifics, so he was able to quickly pick up that stuff. Hand him a list, he'll memorize it. So he kind of picked that up, and that all developed in a pretty fun little program.
It was really cool because he was coming at it from like this culinary background where it was like he
flavors and tastes.
Larenum, what's that? These
exactly.
5 things.
There was
why aren't we making our own?
Yeah,
we have all those in house.
Yeah, there was like a lot of key stuff that I was like, oh, we could do that. And like he had like a crazy palate, and I just like you came on and you started making your own like liqueurs and stuff, and you like broke away from the syrups and things like that. And we were pushing like the bartender's choice really hard. So it was like we'd sort of just like talk to a guest would sit down, we'd talk to them for like a minute and just sort of get a read on what their flavor
into
profiles were.
Yeah.
And build a drink around that. And
love that.
So the whole program became just training enough on everything about making cocktails so that everyone that was on the bar team could walk up to you and make you a cocktail that was built for you.
So we interviewed Venus Fizz House.
Oh, cool. I did their reno.
What? On the place downtown?
Yeah, I helped them with their remodel.
Really?
Yeah, I was like a consultant on their reno plans.
So cool. Yeah. Small world.
Yeah. I had interviewed a bartender that was there when they were trying to do it, and they didn't have much experience.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Those two were teachers.
They're teachers. Yeah, they're very awesome.
They became crazy cocktail people, teachers, and they always talk about, like when you're talking about like Tyler coming in as a chef first, they always talk about how like when they're hiring people, they don't not hire people who are bartenders or cocktail makers, but they specifically do look for people that are not.
Yeah.
So that way they have like this total openness to it where they're not like, no, you have to do this thing. Like Tyler coming into it, he's just like, could do this other thing because you can make that thing, you know?
Well, I think there's a little bit of a problem in like the bartending world as far as like you were a hot shot at a restaurant that you used to work at.
Yeah.
And so you come into a place like being like, oh, I'm the best bartender around. Like, let me come in here and shake things up, not to like make a pun.
You wanted to make that.
I kind of, but oh god, that was bad. So you come into a place thinking like, oh, like I do everything right, you do everything wrong. It's like, no, the best bartenders, they come in and they work a bar for 6 months to a year and figure out the systems.
Yeah.
Work it, how it's supposed to be and how the owners meant it to be. And then you like change things incrementally that need to be changed, that you just improve on things. And like, I certainly have been guilty of that in the past, of like coming into a place being like, oh, I'm a hot shot. Like I know what I'm doing. But like, it's a weird world. I mean, it's been a while since we've bartended.
For you.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I made my neighbor's cocktails the other day.
It's definitely,
I can't wait for you guys to be able to do to-go cocktails. Because even that stuff, like I brought that home a couple times, and that's so good.
Yeah.
So when I can straight up just like, because that's what I did, like the to-go portion of it, I straight up grabbed that and I was like,
Oh yeah.
I got out of work. I'm going to go take that and make a cocktail right now. It would be even better if I could drive up and be like, I'm going to buy this cocktail and then go drink that cocktail
exactly,
right now on my way home.
By March, we just have to build a bathroom pretty much where you're sitting. By March, we should have 30 people sitting outside eating cocktails.
No way.
We want this to be like a
we'll have a nice patio.
Yeah.
So there should be a big patio space outside with 20 to 30 seats. One of us at the helm at a cocktail station over there making the cocktails that are in mixers right now.
Hell yeah.
And then lots of bartenders' choices, kind of
and
specialize in cocktails.
I'd like to see food wise, like we're doing, like we started like integrating like a different takeout special every night.
Yeah.
But we want to do a different like in-house special every night. Like,
in-house.
all right, we have
so that's
3
like,
burgers tonight. It's burger and beer night. Come get some local beer. Come get like these awesome burgers that we're making, and maybe we'll do live music. We have some friends.
Yeah, exactly. And we've been talking about. We have so much space here, and
hell yeah.
Honestly, one of the biggest things that was helpful for us is
so much space out this way.
Yeah, we rent from Howells, and they're the most accommodating and awesome people we could have ever hoped
Golden.
for. They've been
fantastic.
They've been a lifesaver through this.
Love that.
So
every time we come up with a new idea.
They want us. Their biggest thing was they wanted something that was separate, but it's a part of this. They look at this as a complex, and they want this to be.
We want to keep people hanging out here.
Yeah, exactly. They want this to be the food spot of being over there. Yeah,
and then hang out, and then get back in here.
They have hundreds of members over there. So like having a food spot where their members could come to.
They do a lot of
classes,
training,
like training classes during the day.
Sure.
So we offer like lunches to the training classes and stuff like that as well.
So listeners out there that aren't familiar with where we're at, Craft is built into just a tiny piece of this building. And this building, the only other thing in this parking lot is a shooting range that's pretty bougie.
It's the second largest gun range in Maine.
It's a really
some of the most
range.
Talented Tatiana. They have a female shooter over there, Tatiana, who's like one of the top female shooters in the country.
Holy shit!
Who teaches training classes, and they have some very, very talented people over there.
A lot of law enforcement come here.
Yeah, to get all their stuff. So that was kind of what at least when we saw the space, we're like, all right, well, at least there's the backbone of that, and they're super open to having us. Like they're in here every single day getting lunch. And
great, that's awesome.
They're the biggest advocates for us in like the community. We couldn't have asked for more.
I love that. And then it's like I didn't even tell you guys, so I'll pitch this to you already right on the air. How's that? Yeah. But like right away when I started seeing some of the stuff that you're making, I'm gonna have like artist living quarters. Like people will be living on site with me while they work on their album. So they might I'm really excited. I already had people be like, I'm going to fly in from Seattle. I'm going to fly in from wherever. Like people are excited to come stay here.
Yeah.
And that was the point of it because I saw at like these conventions in LA and New York, like these amazing producers at these conventions would talk about back in the day. They would rent these farms in France and stuff and like go out there and like get away and disconnect. And so people will be staying on site. And I was like, the craft stuff is so perfect for that. Like if I had some of the cocktails ready to go for them or like the meal kits,
definitely,
because I'm going to have a very tiny little kitchen for them, like enough that they can do damage, but not like going nuts.
Yeah. All you need
it's
is
the perfect stuff to have around so they can make some wicked good food, but not like totally go nuts in this kitchen if it's small.
Yeah.
You know?
And we have people we've had a lot of people who are like, oh, my kids live in the area. They don't know how to cook. Like, can you help them get food into their self? So stuff like that where it's literally like they need nutrients. They don't know how to cook. They have a burner and they have a pot. Like, what can you do for them? It's like, no problem. We can
take some pork masala bag and throw it in there.
Or honestly, like you let us know 2 hours ahead of time. Like our whole goal was we wanted to be Gray's Kitchen. So like if we're your neighborhood kitchen, and if there's something that you really need, we're very flexible and we work with people. Really good name
for a restaurant.
Gray's Kitchen.
Yeah. So as far as like if people do call us, they're like confused about the meal kits and they think it's hot, as long as they've given us enough notice, we will heat it up. We will cook it for them.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
No upcharging.
No, it's never the first answer.
Yeah. Well, our biggest thing is trying to say yes and like accommodate to the people who are being awesome enough to reach out to us and to support us. So like
I think that's such a good that's such a good business principle.
Yeah. So we're just kind of trying to do.
It's literally just the three of us here, and like this is our first restaurant.
Yeah, we're open 7 days a week. There's 3 of us.
We live here basically, and you know it means a lot to us. If you know, we love to hear good feedback. We love it. It makes good interactions with people like make the day great. But like, if there's an issue, like, tell us about it. I feel like a lot of folks will just like not say anything and just never show up again.
Yeah.
We've made some of our best changes from constructive feedback.
definitely.
Even like as small as like, I remember our first kind of bit of constructive criticism was on our roasted chicken sandwich, which it takes me 2 or 3 days to make. I mean, it's a chicken sandwich with bacon and chicken. Like, why does that take 2 or 3 days to make? But somebody was like, oh, I didn't like the texture of the chicken. And the next time I worked with it, I was thinking about that. And I found these like little bits of cartilage that were actually attached to the chicken breast. And I never thought to check the chicken breast because it's white meat. It's tender.
We roast the chickens whole.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we pull them a few times a week.
We do a lot of the processing here.
Yeah. Having that feedback has definitely been negative. Honestly, like as everyone always says, like you learn more from your failures than your successes.
It's not easy to take it.
Yeah, but
it
I
makes
think
you better.
That's the biggest thing about like people have been open with giving us feedback because we were so open about like this is an experiment. Like no one's open to business
Test
like
kitchen.
this. We didn't follow a model. We had no idea what was going to happen. We just want to know what you folks want so that we can provide it in a better way.
Yeah.
And kind of explaining that to people with a smile is kind of what we've been trying to do.
If you ever have an issue, we will make it right.
How have people been taking this concept that you have? Because I think, like, for me, and I said this earlier, this concept moving forward, like, people say that COVID moved people to what will happen in about 6 or 7 years. Boom, already immediately in 1 year of like, what way will we conduct ourselves in certain ways?
Yeah.
And I personally, obviously, people are still going to want to go out, and I know that you're going to build out some stuff too, but people are going to want to have certain like in-person experiences. But this is something that I've always wanted to have around that people just weren't having around because they already had their setup with a restaurant in-house of what they're doing. They did takeout, but it's just like, it's always been like takeout is just kind of like you don't want to eat here? Here's the food. But like you're starting takeout first
for a long time.
Yeah.
and then building out some other experiences down the line and stuff like that. What are people saying with the concept as you've creeped in with saying like people call and you probably hear their conversation over and over and over again. You've got like a way to explain it. What are people saying to you guys about this concept?
I mean, the biggest thing for us is like, and this was something even when we were talking about opening, like if we had opened a business called Craft Curbside a year and a half ago, no one would have known what we were doing because they wouldn't have known what curbside was.
Right.
Now we've gotten to a point where everyone curbside, it's curbside pickup, it's curbside food, it's stuff like that. So even in that regard, it's come so far where people understand it. I think that there have been other places and people who are doing on this kind of meal kit stuff that's prepared. HelloFresh was huge, like people being familiar with the concept of something like that that's coming to you on a regular basis. And people were familiar with locally sourced. So I think having people have that kind of decade of background in craft food and then just necessitating having
the education piece for the community has not been that bad.
Yeah, that
when you're telling people that
it hasn't been too tough. People are just really excited to not have to cook for themselves.
They're
just really excited to be able to drive 3 minutes down the road and get something hot and fresh.
You have a restaurant style,
I love it.
Not like Stouffer's lasagna
that's
like ready to go for my oven, but it's like
exactly
you have like fresh noodles and like fresh mozzarella and like your house-made sauce on. Sign
I'm
me up.
in.
We followed the other big thing is like we've kind of, not to say we've passed the savings on, but we've tried to continue the fact that we don't have drastic overhead covering all of our food products into like the pricing of the meal kit. So the ability to get a meal at home for 2 people for $25 with 3 courses is something that
phenomenal.
So
we're extraordinarily
and it's all organic and like good source food. It's not junk that you're getting from some wholesale distributor that's
all
like
starts as raw ingredients coming from the area. So
big. Yeah,
like our lobster roll, that was a huge hit over the summer when we first opened.
It's still in the top sellers.
It's still our top seller, I think. Yeah. We were doing $10 lobster rolls as a fun way of getting people. I mean, it was kind of a reflection on just the lobster scene in Maine.
$10, like that's crazy.
But lobster prices were just low with COVID, so we kind of did it.
Yeah, we were.
You're used to a $25 lobster roll, and you sit there and you enjoy it, but you're also kind of pissed.
Oh yeah,
you know, you're like, I'm happy that I have this, but I'm also sad.
Yeah, we did it so people could come and get one hot and one cold. That was the idea. It was like pay $20 and you get 2 lobster rolls. So.
I would say that like our lobster roll was worth $20, $22, $23.
Yeah.
After we had some trial and error.
Yeah, and one of the reasons we could do it at such a low price was like, one, the lobster prices were really low, but also we were getting the whole lobster and processing it here. Like we were the ones taking the lobster meat out of the shell.
And then we take that and turn it into stock, and then that's what became our lobster bisque. And we do a dairy-free lobster bisque with that.
We try to to do the end-to-tail method and use every part of the animal that we can.
Our food waste is very, very minimal.
And what is waste goes into my compost pile, and we're composting it for all the food that I grow in my backyard for here. So,
that's so cool.
Yeah, it's definitely all getting used.
What does David say? It's not waste if it goes in
the
compost.
David. It's not waste if it goes in the compost. So.
Pretty much true.
Yeah.
It's got a purpose, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. So we're pretty close here where I'm going to ask you like the 5 questions they ask people at the end. But I do want to ask a little bit extra just because we don't always cover like food and beverage and craft and things like that because we're all over. And especially based off of your story, what would you like, doesn't even have to be based off of like COVID times, but like what would you tell someone if they wanted to start up like anything in this industry? Like what's some advice now with this is your first restaurant under the belt? What's some things that you'd tell someone that's thinking about doing anything like this at all as some advice that you learned in that first startup months doing this?
I'd say take your, like have an end goal, but take one concept, master that one concept, and then just very patiently and methodically just add to it and add to it. Like we started, like I mentioned at the beginning, we started with a full page, but it was 3 items. We now have a 2-page menu.
Yeah.
That is, some of the items are mildly complicated, but we could not have started day one with a 2-page menu. I would have pulled what's left of my hair out.
Yeah. Hey man, I'm bald, so I don't want to.
Yeah. You have hair. You're the minority.
I know. Yeah, it's okay. I'm used to it. The redhead. I would say, for me, honestly, the biggest thing, especially food industry wise, with people who are looking to open it, is understanding that you're not just opening, and this comes from my perspective specifically, but you're not just opening a restaurant, you're opening a business.
Yes.
And numbers are really important. I do the number side of things, so that's kind of my view of it.
I say it to music people all the time.
But the most important thing is you're opening a business. So not just making sure, and yes, if you're very talented at food, making sure that you have people in your team that are able to do other stuff.
Yep.
So we have people who are extremely talented in beverage and extremely talented in food, and someone who can do numbers and hopefully put that together.
Yes.
So like aligning and having a team of well-rounded people, which is kind of what we hopefully put together.
Yeah.
And having a structure where, yes, if you don't have this skill set, that's totally fine, but you're going to need someone who has that skill set.
Right.
And I'd say understanding yourself and having a good enough register on your skill set to know that there are people who fill in your gaps and that are going to make you stronger. Like having these 2 people makes me stronger as a restaurant worker.
The 3 of us are very lucky.
Having
Right.
people who round you out is definitely really important.
Yeah, I think that is a common mistake that can be really easily taken without listening to all the context. Like say someone listened to this one episode, right? If they only listened through and they heard I just started it up because I found the right spot and I started it, and the first day I sold strawberries, and they might be like, oh, like I can start a business. Like what, like, and that's, I want them to feel that. Like, awesome. Great. Encourage them, because that's a big feat for you guys. You're like, we're going to sell whatever the hell we need to do to like make this happen with what we've got in the meantime. It's all awesome. But if they only listen to that, they didn't hear that point. It's like, I say this to musicians and artists all the time. And that's part of the reason why this podcast exists, is because we're waking up from work. Doesn't mean we're not working hard. We're doing what we want to do full time. And to do things full time and not the hobby, you have to make money. You have to keep the lights on, and you have to be really smart and figure out whatever you can use to make that happen. But it's like you need both. You need that being okay with the risk and taking that jump piece of you that it made you allow to pull that trigger that so many people won't pull that. But to keep out here and to keep doing your thing, you had to keep adapting and having that team and those different strengths to keep adapting to make that a living thing. You need both.
In general, I think, work and being an entrepreneur and trying to start your own business, like whether it's a restaurant or not, I think what's really huge is like, you can get bogged down in like everyday like monotony, but really every day is different. Every day is a chance to improve. Take pride in what you do and come in every day looking to be better than you were the day before. You're not always going to be able to do that, but like that's a huge part of it. And this isn't like the mecca of all food and beverage in the world, but like I come in here thinking like I should be proud of what we've accomplished and what we're going to accomplish.
Yeah.
And then as far as like the restaurant thing, if you have partners, like I guess being patient with one another. Opening a restaurant's really hard. I think the biggest part of our success is sort of like an unrelenting loyalty to one another. Like we may get mad at each other or frustrated with one another, but at the end of the day, we work it out and we figure out like what's next. How do we improve?
Exactly. Like when we set into this, our idea was, we're going to get through the small things now, but in 20 years, we want to own a restaurant together.
Of course.
So there's things that are going to come up in the meantime, but big picture is kind of the big thing in that regard. So
very love that. Yeah. All right. So now I'm going to ask you my 5 questions that I ask at the end. I don't have like a special name for it. Everyone has like a final 5, fast 5 or whatever. I just straight up and like, these are the 5 questions I ask everyone at the end, but I don't know. Sorry guys. Sorry out there.
Fast 5.
This is
There we go.
This is the first episode. I'm going to have like a special voiceover in or something. But you don't have to think like these don't have to be crazy long answers. They can be kind of pointed like that.
Yeah.
But so the first one would be just what is it that makes it so that this is the thing that you have to do every day versus any other thing that you could wake up on the planet and just do? Why is this the thing that you have to do for a living or just in general? Like why, like say you didn't even have to make income from this. Why is this the thing?
It's funny you mentioned the income thing because we didn't start making
we got paid last week.
Last week was our first time.
Yeah, it was not about the money.
Definitely not. I would say that I've worked in quite a few kitchens where giving a quality product at an affordable price was not the general consensus in the kitchen. It was go to work and do my job and go home.
Yep.
And that's always annoyed me. And now that I run my own kitchen, and I really try to bring that in every day, and that gives me a lot of satisfaction.
Of course.
Yeah.
That's huge. You got to give a shit about what you do.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's crazy.
Yeah. I think for me, the biggest thing is just like I've been around food my whole life. Like my mom grew up on a farm. Like I'm a child of a farmer who went to a daycare that was on a farm, and then have grown up around that stuff. So I think the biggest push for me is just being attached to connecting food with people and the connection that I have. So I think no matter what, I would be involved in food and getting more high quality food that's coming from people in the area together. I think this just kind of happened to be
how it
I
happened.
worked in restaurants since I was 16. I kind of fell into it because my brother was working in restaurants as well. And it just happened to click at a certain point. But I think it's always been about getting high quality food that I care about to people in the area. So the people around us deserve better food. It's kind of always been my opinion. Because of my experience, I understand what food can be. And I kind of hope that people who necessarily can't focus 40 hours a week on what their food intake should be can also have people like me in their lives who can help them understand that.
Love that.
Just the way I go to a doctor and people go to a mechanic, like you can come to us and we can tell you what you should be putting in your body.
Yeah.
Things like that. So
cool.
I guess why I'm here is it's what I'm passionate about. I love food service. I love interacting with guests. As a kid, I used to go out to eat a lot with my dad. We'd go out to restaurants a lot. Mostly because my dad can't cook. He's one of those folks that he's a terrible cook. Sorry, Dad. I will say he can cook a mean spaghetti and sausage, and he's got a chicken dish that's pretty good. But
go-tos.
So we went to restaurants a lot, and I remember that my favorite waiters were the zany weird guys that were funny and had good jokes, but were also knowledgeable, could tell me about what we're eating, and like I love I love the challenge of like talking to folks and sort of bridging the gap between the kitchen and the guest and finding like what on the menu is perfect for them. For me, COVID's been really tough as far as like not being behind a bar. I really miss being behind a bar, and that's what I was really leaning into before all this happened. I think this is part of a larger plan to have that awesome bar again someday.
Yeah.
Once people feel comfortable going out again, and hopefully, things with COVID get better, and people feel like they can go and sit at a bar together.
Yeah.
I miss that feeling of a lively bar, a lot of chatter back and forth.
I miss playing live shows for the same reason.
Oh yeah.
There's something different. Like I've said it on the podcast before, but I've played like 4 or 5 live stream shows. Some were festivals where like there's a ton of people on it, and you feel it just, there's something weird. Like honestly, the biggest thing that hit me with it is like the between the songs. So it's like probably what you feel from the bar, where like you're not talking to all those people at the same time. There's this weird shit that exists from just like being in a room of people that are all like, they're for the most part happy, and there's just like, there's just an energy that everyone's there, like everyone's out to like be out and like have something happen that night. And between the songs is where I felt it, where it was just quiet, and I'd like interact with the comments, and like it would give me like a little bit to like talk with them and stuff, but you're just sitting there, it's just quiet, and it's just weird. There's just it can't be replaced the same way. It's not the same thing.
For a bartender, it's like the difference between like, so the 2 big bar positions are you're either the point man who's dealing with all the guests, or you're the service bartender.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the difference between being like a service bartender who's just making drinks and putting them out to people who they never talk to.
Yeah.
The feeling right now where you're just like standing at a printer that tells you what you're making and you send it to a dining room full of people, versus being the person who stands there and makes drinks and actually gets to hand it to somebody.
Straight
and they
up.
actually get to like tell, oh, this is great. Like, how did you like this? And like interact from that point. So I think that's definitely something that everybody is excited to get back to, for sure.
Totally.
When you're doing that, you end up, there are people, it's rare, but you make lifelong friends. Like there are still people that started off with guests for me, and I still know them and talk to them today. And that interaction is super important, and I can't wait to get back to it.
Your customer service has been invaluable here, and I think you're building those relationships even though you don't have a shaker or stir.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a different kind of interaction, but we're definitely getting those kind of regulars in a different way, from people coming in for their nightly tipple to like, oh, we're coming in because we're grabbing your dinner special tonight.
Yeah,
used to grab.
I mean, it's you 3. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. It's the 2 of them.
Yeah, you come in, you're gonna get one of us.
Yeah. I seem to be on Tyler hours.
Okay.
I run into you sometimes, but I'm
not
the most.
You must have been a weekdayer. Tyler was a weekdayer for a long time. We were doing the weekends because he was down in New Hampshire. So
that would be why.
Yeah,
I'm a weekday type of guy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'll have to make a weekend trip. All right.
It's funny. He's going to come in on Sunday, and I'm going to be on
he's here on the weekends now. Yeah.
Well, I mean, pretty soon it's gonna be myself and Tyler and Chase's brother Cole, because your wife's about to have a baby.
Yeah, exactly.
We're gonna recruit the baby too.
Honestly, she's probably gonna be better.
He'll eat some of that food.
Yeah. So yeah, we're excited to get that going. But yeah, I'll be off for a month or so.
Wow.
But yeah, she'll be going to the school that we provide lunch to, so we'll be making her lunch anyway. So it'll be perfect.
That's awesome.
Full circle.
That's so funny.
So, yeah.
Another reason to keep quality high.
Exactly. Yeah.
Don't be feeding the kids that. My daughter eats there.
Yeah. Then you can use it when people complain too. They'll be like, why are you serving this? They'll be like, my daughter's here. All right,
exactly.
She's eating this too.
About? She's getting the same exact food. I don't know what you're talking. No,
you're eating from my table.
Yeah, we've only had positive feedback from the parents. They've been so thankful. So it's been the coolest thing. And then we're starting a program where we're going to start feeding them dinner too. So we're going to show up one day a week to start and do dinners that they can. You pick up your kid and you pick up dinner and go home with both.
Oh, that's so cool.
So something like that is our next step that we're starting.
That's so cool. Parents are going to love that.
Yeah, and that's kind of starting into we're going to have a couple mobile units this summer. So that'll be our first start.
Whoa.
Some mobile units, hopefully one in Cumberland and one in Wyndham.
What type of mobile unit?
Originally we were talking about lobster roll truck. So like a lobster roll thing based off our lobster roll.
Oh, yeah.
And then also because my brother is a more talented, experienced cook, having him come on and serve more of our dishes. But yeah, we're definitely looking at expanding to Portland. We have a lot of friends in Portland from working there for a while.
Sick.
I'd love to have something parked on the Eastern Prom.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. And then Wyndham is kind of an untapped market. So
Damn.
we're looking
Okay.
at like those. But yeah. And then who knows? My brother wants to put a boat on some water, so we might even have a mobile boat truck.
Did you like go up to people?
Yeah, right on Sebago. So we're talking about all these different
Craft dockside.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of different areas we can go, and
so
we're talking
that's kind
about
of where we're at right
where
now.
we end up.
Figuring out
We have
what's
no
next.
idea, but
Wow. Okay. Well, I'll have to keep an eye out. I'll just be like, I'll be walking downtown, like, hey, what's up? You'll be on a boat. What's up, guys?
Yeah, exactly,
all
yeah.
right, great.
Yeah, he's a big fisherman. He's like, we should have a boat. I was like, yeah, okay. He's like, we got fresh fish.
Perfect. Straight up catch the fish, dress it, and
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, next question would be, what along the way is the worst thing that you did? Like, what's the biggest mistake that you made? Something where like you could give the lesson to someone, like they automatically popped into their head and they like actually learned that lesson without having to do it. You're like, don't do this thing. It sucked.
yeah, I'll go first because a lot of people say, "Oh, live my life, no regrets." Bullshit. You've got regrets. You just don't want to talk about them. I had this awesome experience in college. I'm a JWU grad, Johnson Wales in Providence, and part of our program was we did an externship at a restaurant. Well, I had to pick the hardest place to get to that I could because I wanted to challenge myself.
Okay.
So I went to New Zealand, and I didn't actually understand the caliber of the place that I was working at. It was one of the top rated restaurants in the country over there, and it was in a restaurant like rotating dining room on the top floor of the tallest building in the Southern Hemisphere. I was way over my head.
Oh my God.
My first job there was like taking barnacles off of mussels that were pulled out of the ocean that morning. But I came back to finish my degree and finish another degree, which didn't actually, I think it actually was like kind of like a deep mud pit where I kept moving forward, but I had to carry all of this weight on my boots and stuff, and it just like it bogged me down for a really long time. And I had a job offer there. Like they offered to sponsor my visa, and I loved it there. And
wow,
still like this wouldn't have been possible because I'd probably still live there. But that's one area where I was like, now I should have followed my instincts there. I had an education, and I came back for a piece of paper. And yeah,
got it. I mean, I think that I've talked about college on this a lot.
Yeah,
and I'm always like very, very neutral. Where I say, if you get to go where you want to be at, and college is the way that you do it, do it.
Do it. Yeah.
If you don't need it to go do what you want to do, and there's a better way to not do it, don't do it.
Yeah,
like, I never shit on it on either side too hard, but like I totally get it.
Oh yeah,
I get it.
I think I could have learned some things that I did not learn by extending my
being there,
my stay,
being with those people that are crazy.
Yeah. I certainly wouldn't be here if it wasn't for college, because I actually, to pay for college, I was working in restaurants. And it was like, okay, so
yeah, I'm
getting bad grades in school because I'm bartending till 2 a.m.
Yeah.
But I really love bartending. This is great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are weird secondary things like that too, where like if you didn't go to college, then maybe you wouldn't have made the choices that you did. It has nothing to do with education. And
that's a rabbit hole and all these different directions you could go down.
Yeah, I was an education major for a year and a half. And
were you really?
Absolutely. That's how I met my wife. That's why I met my wife.
No shit.
Yeah, I went to a teaching school, but I'd worked in restaurants since I was 16.
Yeah.
It took me a year and a half to realize that what I actually wanted to do was work in restaurants. So kind of having that opportunity to see what you don't want to do. And I'm not the kind of person who wants to sit in a classroom for 4 more years.
Yep.
I wanted to be up and moving around and like learning on my feet and with my hands and stuff like that. Yeah, definitely seeing that. That's huge.
Wow. All right. So flip side, best decision you've ever made in your entire life. Doesn't have to be your entire life. Yeah. Best decision you've ever made with this business or entire life. I'll give you anything, whatever you want to say.
I'd say moving to Maine. there was a point where I was in the Berkshires. I was at a really amazing restaurant, and I was heading the bar program there. If you're ever in North Adams, Massachusetts, visit Public Eat and Drink. It's right down the road from Mass Mocha, a really awesome contemporary art museum. But I was making a lot of money there, and I liked everybody I worked with. Really great crew. The ownership of the restaurant was awesome. The manager was awesome, and I was just having fun bartending. The guests were awesome. But my wife was here in Maine, and I was just like, at that point we weren't married or engaged yet, and I was like, oh man, like I really like this girl, but like I don't know if I should come to Maine. Like I'm making a lot of money here. I enjoy my job. But I think I kind of like came up with the excuse like, oh, I got a job at a restaurant in Portland, I can come up here. But really, I was coming here for the girl. So
yeah.
A year later, I ended up proposing to her, and we got married on December 5th. So I think coming to Maine, coming here to be with her, that was probably the best decision I could have made.
Sure.
Yeah. I was on the sideline, like I guess behind the scenes, I was still kind of a wreck because I wasn't with her. So I'm definitely.
I lived away from my wife for a year.
Yeah.
And it's awful.
Yeah.
It's hard shit.
Yeah. I would say for me the biggest thing is kind of along those lines, but yeah, like taking risks in your kind of moves in your career. So for me, I've been working in restaurants for my whole career, but nothing particularly special. And I was in New Hampshire where I was going to college. And then my wife at that time, my fiance, graduated, and we made the big random decisions. I think one day she jokingly said, "Hey, want to move to Boston?" And I said, "Yes." And I was like, "Yeah,
yep,
I do
okay.
actually." And she's like, "Oh, okay." And she found a job first and was like, "Oh, well, there's a school here that would totally bring me on." And I was just like, "Yeah, we should go to Boston."
Yeah, let's go there. Yep.
And just I'd say like following, for me, the biggest thing was like following and trying to not necessarily find places where you're the strongest, but like I actively tried to find places where I was one of the least knowledgeable people, because that's the only way you're going to learn from people. And kind of following that at an early age, I thought was kind of my...
For location is what you're saying?
Yeah, honestly, wherever it has to be for you. Like for me in New Hampshire, there was no one who was going to teach me anything. Anything I had learned about cocktails was because I'd read a book from someone who was hundreds of miles away from me.
I talk on that a lot because people ask me all the time when I'm saying that like my career is going to be based off of like working with artists and like music and all these things. They're like, why are you not in Nashville or LA?
Yeah.
Constant. All the time.
Oh, yeah.
The reason is because the way that the person that I am in those cities, first of all, love them. Also, you should go to those if you want to get influenced and like learn some shit and like be challenged and like be with people that are huge and be challenged by it. Like all of that's good stuff. But the way that I am, I have my most zen and I can focus and I can be my whole self when I'm in like a more country spot. Like I just am not a city person to live there. I need space and I need to like wander, and like all of that makes me more creative, and it makes me more myself, where like just the fact of being in a city, I can go and like I've been in like Florence or like all these crazy cities that are like New York and all these, like I've been in them for months and stuff like that, and you adapt a little bit. But at the end of the day, even after a good amount of adaptation, I'm still just like stressed.
Oh, yeah.
And I'd come into sessions stressed, or I'd come into places stressed. And I was like, you know what? I'll just find a way to make it work in a more rural place. I'll get the income somehow.
Oh, yeah.
We have the internet. 2020 everyone figured out, oh, I can work from home. There's just a million different ways. And so it's like, go to where it calls you. You know what I mean?
I think
it's
regardless, like you should definitely follow your heart and be like in the situation that you find most comfortable.
Yeah.
You should also experience things, like try living in a city for a little
Definitely.
bit. Try living somewhere rural for a little bit.
Mix it up.
Like don't be afraid to like put yourself on the line a little bit.
No, I definitely don't say
thing,
stay in one spot your whole life.
Yeah.
But I like living, but you don't have to move anywhere to do a thing for the most part. There's some special things.
Especially now. Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you're younger, like if you're like in your early 20s, you're not sure what you want to do. Don't get too tied down to anything. Like take risks. force yourself to be uncomfortable.
Yes, all the time.
Try to learn, find a mentor, be passionate. Yeah, be passionate. It's huge.
Yeah. Cool. What is a resource that you'd recommend the audience? Could be a book, a video, website, anything. It can be based off of this specifically. It can be off of whatever you want. What's a good resource you recommend?
There was a book that I read probably 3 or 4 years ago. I'm trying to remember the name of the author. It's called Humble Inquiry by, I think it's Ed Sheen, something like that.
Okay.
It's a very, very short book. It's like, I think it's like 75 to 100 pages. But the basic concept of this book is ask instead of tell. So learning how to ask questions instead of thinking that you know the answer. There was a point where if I had opened a place like this, I would have been extraordinarily closed-minded. I would have been, nope, this is the way we're doing it, blah, blah, blah. And you can get the hell out of the door if you're not going to listen to me. And I'd throw a tantrum. I'd throw shit against the wall, whatever. After reading that book, I'm like, oh, this makes a lot of sense. Like maybe I can have some better connections with people and maybe make myself better by asking a question instead of jumping to a conclusion. There was one day, actually this has happened over the course of opening this place, where you guys have wanted to do things with food, and it would have been very easy for me to go, no, I'm the chef. What the fuck are you doing? Get out of my kitchen. Dylan wanted to do a burger, and he's like, what do you think? Can I do it? I went, you don't need my permission. Do it. Just try it out. See what works. The burger right now is our third best selling item on the menu this month.
Wow.
And people come in like, that's the best damn burger I've ever had. And yeah, if my ego would have gotten in the way, people wouldn't be experiencing something that I didn't think of.
Yeah.
Let go of the ego. Yeah. Humble Inquiry. I'm pretty sure it was Edgar Sheen.
Cool.
Let's see. This entire building is based off of a book called Restaurant Success by the Numbers, which that dude thinks a lot like I think, honestly. And his approach to the financial backing of a restaurant, I thought was really great. So our entire business plan and everything, the numbers are
Restaurant Success by Numbers.
Restaurant Success by the Numbers. I think it's the second edition.
He and I listened to that book.
I'm a big audiobook person, audio listener, podcasts, and stuff like that. But yeah, it's I've listened to that countless times. I essentially create a spreadsheet that replicates his stuff, and that's what our stuff is based off of. And then I'd say the other biggest thing for me is Setting the Table by Danny Meyer.
That's great.
Is he essentially, I don't know, he's the backbone of enlightened hospitality in the world. He kind of has radiated that into what started in New York City. He's the owner, creator of Gramercy Tavern, 11 Madison Park, all those places. But his book on just his approach to restaurants and hospitality and everything has always been a big part of kind of my career and how I've approached things. So yeah, I'd say that if you work in the restaurant industry and you haven't read that, you should. I've worked places where that was required reading before you started.
Wow.
Stuff like that.
Cool.
So read it. It will change your life if you haven't and you work in the industry.
Cool.
I think that book can actually be
honestly, yeah. Even if you're not in the restaurant industry,
there's a lot of really good information
on there. Yeah, it's pretty incredible. He's a crazy enlightened human being who essentially just focused on what actually was important in hospitality and what makes a hospitality person, a hospitable person, hospitable.
Huge.
Those aspects, and he has this whole concept of 51 percenters. Who are mostly people who are able to to feel and to relate to people versus just people who can learn stats and stuff like that.
Right.
And kind of having that whole thing, and yeah, his concepts are just top notch. So
cool.
Yeah.
I'd say biggest resource for me, I guess, probably Liquid Intelligence by Dave Arnold. That's what got me into craft cocktails.
Cool.
And got me to be more passionate about bartending and the restaurant industry in general, is to just get really nerdy about it and break down the science behind cocktail making. He does a lot of fun stuff with I guess the scientific method and just trying to figure out like what makes a great cocktail. And he's also the inventor of some funky stuff for like cooking and bartending. Really, really cool book. If you're at home bartending and you missed like those craft cocktails, definitely check that book out.
Which is going up right now. Huge popularity coming back into that. I'm excited for that.
Yeah, and I think, in historic times like this, with a global pandemic going on, every time something happens, like a Great Depression, a war, a global pandemic, the bartending world changes because it has to.
Yeah.
People are going to want to drink. And they're going to want a good drink, too. Although I'm not against a warm shot of tequila.
Yeah.
And so I'd say that book, and then just, the people around you. If there's somebody who's intelligent and, they know something, try to get that knowledge for yourself.
Yeah.
The two, like, I'd say the biggest thing that, I saw in Chase and Tyler immediately once I started working with them at Liquid Riot was like, hey, these guys are smart and they know stuff that I don't know. Like, teach me that stuff. Like, Tyler would be in the kitchen doing something, making something funky, and I'd be like, what are you doing? Like, how do you do that? Like, what's the process of it?
Yeah.
Same thing with Chase. Like, I'd be making a cocktail and like thinking I'm a hotshot bartender, but like I know he knows his shit. So like I'd be like, dude, like taste this cocktail. Like, what does it need? Like, I can make a good cocktail. Taste it. Give me your perspective. Like, how do I make it great?
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So last one is the easiest. Where do people find you if they want to keep up with you guys? Like, how do they find Craft Curbside?
Yeah. So the best way is social media. I think that's kind of the biggest thing right now. Instagram, we're at Craft Curbside. Facebook, we're at Craft Curbside. And then the website is like our most up to date because we're so hyper locally sourced and everything's so fresh. It rotates frequently, and what we have available depends on not just. It's not like we just go to the store. It has the farmer milk the cow that day.
Yep.
Things like that, which are like multi-step processes, but that is your best way to see what we actually have for food that day.
What's the website?
Craftcurbside.com.
Yeah.
Cool.
So nice and straightforward.
Really, I'd say easy to use interface to order online with us. We do curbside pickup through there. So you just put in your the time that you're picking it up. You click everything for your order, and then a little description of your car. We have a pretty good vantage point and we've gotten a lot better at like looking for makes and models of cars. Like, okay,
we've learned a lot about cars.
The great Honda 2010 CRV is pulling up. I think
we'll do an experiment here someday. We'll have straight up like a 2001 to 2018 Honda Civics in silver and black.
We'll see how we do.
Seven.
And you can only look at the side mirror.
So that's definitely, especially with like the daily specials we've talked about, and then things like we're headed into Valentine's Day, so like we have a Valentine's Day pre-order menu right now.
Sick.
So you can like pre-order stuff ahead of time as well. So going into it, you can do it same way we did it for Thanksgiving. Like huge pre-orders of like turkeys and stuffing and everything.
Cool.
Headed into Valentine's Day for the next bunch of weeks. You can go on the website, pre-order. You can call us and pre-order. But some pretty tasty dinners on there for sure. So
and our phone number is also a really good resource because if you call, you're going to get for the foreseeable future one of the three owners.
You'll probably get some good information if you call.
Perfect. So if you have questions about stuff, just straight up call their shop and you'll talk to someone that was on the show. How's that, listeners?
The number is 207-657-1087.
Sick.
And we're here 11 to 6, 7 days a week, and then Fridays we sell so much pizza we stay open till 8. So
word.
81 West Gray Road.
Right off the highway. So
cool. Nice and once again, people, if you are hitting up Craft, hit me up and I will definitely come meet up with you because I live like a mile from their place, which is pretty bomb. So if you're out there and you want to check out these links and you're in the middle of something because you're on podcast, all of those links will be in the show notes. So don't have to write anything down. Just check out below and you can check that stuff out and go right over to them. But thank you guys so much for having me tonight, chatting about all this stuff here. And it's pretty cool to like.
We did this in the shop. So cool.
I love doing that here. There's something about being in someone's business and talking about it.
Yeah.
That's different than like being on Zoom and like your room. It's just a different thing. Like this is what you guys made. This is crazy, you know? So thank you guys so much for having me here. And it's exciting to like be in startup mode the same time that you guys got here and look forward to being grayers.
Yeah.
I don't know what you'd call it. Grayettes.
Yeah, they're Patriots here. That's the Patriots in gray. That's their high school mascot.
Oh, really?
The Patriots, yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
As long as they don't draft Cam Newton, you know? All right, guys. Thank you guys for watching on live. If you didn't catch all of this, this episode will be out on podcast form, not next week, but the week after that. We're a little bit behind from the live session, so I've got a buffer in case life gets extra crazy. So thank you guys so much for joining us live. Thank you again, Craft, for being on for another episode of the Waking Up from Work podcast. Peace.